All right. So I'm Kimi Hasagawa. I'm the lead teacher of the Core Movement Integration Training Institute. I'm here with my colleague, Deb Fledick, who can introduce herself.
I'm Deb Lettick. I have a private practice in Maynard, Massachusetts. It's about a half an hour west of Boston, and I use core movement integration all the time. And I've been in practice 37 years, and I've used CMI for about 15 years. And it helps me keep in balance as well as with my clients.
And
Glad
Deb's,
everyone's here.
yeah, and Deb's a massage therapist, and I'm a physical therapist. And I've studied core movement integration for about 20 years now. Seems impossible.
Keeps us going.
Yeah. Um, this presentation, we want to remind you, will be recorded. And so if you do not want to appear in the video, you can turn off your camera. The recording will be available to everyone who registered, whether they actually attended or not. So you'll get a notice when the recording is available. Doug has told me that most of the work that we'll be doing today will be in sitting, and I assume that you each have a chair, so you're all set. You don't need any other equipment. And our speaker today, I'm pleased to announce, is Doug Johnson. He's a jazz pianist and professor of piano at Berklee College of Music in Boston. He is a CMI certified practitioner, and he is also works with the biotensegrity group. And I'll let him introduce himself in more detail if he wishes. So here we have Doug Johnson. Thank you.
Well, I'll get going. Is my level okay? How is it for piano? I thought maybe I'd just play a little something first. Hello? I hope that came through. Uh, my sound is funny. I'm assuming everybody can hear me. You'll let me know if you can't. Okay, great.
Yes.
I guess that was part of my introduction. I play piano. I play jazz piano. I also play. I also play classical piano. Have a background really equally in classical music and jazz. Just a quick. There's not a lot of time, but I'll give you a quick kind of bio just to give you a sense of how I got to being here talking to you all. I started off very young as a pianist, but then I was a trombonist. That was my real main instrument. And when I was younger, it all came very easily. I had a lot of aptitude and had a lot of success. And at some point, I developed a focal dystonia, which some of you, I'm curious how many people here know that. Back when this happened, it was an embouchure focal dystonia. For those of you who may not be aware of this kind of issue, it's not uncommon with musicians. Best known with some pianists, Leon Fleischer is a very famous example. Who, in his right hand, it's focal in the sense that it's an isolated area of the body, but also it's focal in terms of it's activity specific. So you might go to try to move your fourth finger, but then your third finger tightens up, and you just lose functional fine control. And that happened here, which was, as you can imagine, was incredibly miserable, long drawn out traumatic experience. I had always played piano, so I switched to piano when I was in grad school at NEC, and then developed a tendonitis. So out of the frying pan into the fire, and this sent me down this road of learning about movement in the body in all sorts of ways, and it was finding a brilliant and truly unique piano teacher that he was the only one who understood what was going on. I saw a lot of people that didn't help at all, and it was learning from him that quickly got rid of the pain, but also started me down a long learning path to, and one of the most helpful things in terms of teaching from that is learning that a phrase that I like to use: getting rid of pain isn't the end, it's the beginning. We like to put out fires and think everything, if the pain's gone, everything's going to be fine. But as we all know, if somebody has pain somewhere and they get relief for 24 hours, that's not really the issue. The issue is what are the movement patterns that are, and the ways of organizing ourselves and picturing our body, all sorts of things. What's contributing to that thing, that light bulb, a sign that something is not working? Then how can we deal with those things? And for an artist, for anybody who's a performer of some kind, a dancer, an athlete, the same things that help you not have pain, which of course is a good thing, those are also the things that help you play with endurance. You have a Rubinstein and a Horowitz, two of the greatest pianists ever, playing in their 80s. And you can't do that if you're not moving optimally. So it's really a continuum, and that's something. One of the things I want to try to communicate is how the various ways that you can, if you're not musicians, I know there are a number of fine musicians here in the group, but if you're not a musician already, how can you confidently understand where the musician is coming from, so you can use your skills to really help them? And so what so often happens is somebody goes to see a doctor, physical therapist, and they say they have wrist pain, so they treat their wrist, and it doesn't get better because the cause isn't the wrist, but also it's the interface with the instrument that's the issue. It's the movement issues related to connecting to the instrument that are really the proximal issue. And if that's not dealt with, even if there's some immediate relief, you're not dealing with the cause. So there's all sorts of ways that you can actually do that. Just go through a few more things here. So over the years, I think, like probably a lot of us, I've done a lot of different things. I've explored a lot of things, which is how I got to CMI. But I did Tai Chi pretty intensively a long time ago. I was not organized very well when I was doing it, and so I don't feel like I have direct skills from it, but I learned an enormous amount, and it informs the way I think about things in so many ways. So Tai Chi was really important. Alexander technique was very helpful and informative, and influences how I work with people a great deal. And in the middle of things, I became a registered nurse, which interestingly enough doesn't really make much difference at all, I don't think. But it's nice to have that degree I can flash if I need it. Although I never want to work in a hospital again. One of the big things I studied and am very involved with is a thing called body mapping, and which is kind of a funny term, honestly, but that's something I'm going to kind of explain what that involves, and that's that the basic principle of what that is something that is incredibly useful and can help us all a lot in our teaching as we're working with people. And I think it absolutely goes parallel with the way Joseph talks about the body and mind learning as we go, and leaving time for that, and understanding how the learning process is really what we're after. And because if you get somebody to move a particular way that's positive and they can't ever find it again, there's not much utility there. And biotensegrity is a huge part of my understanding. I'm not going to go into this much at all. It's just a huge topic. And what I might do is just send an outline of some of these things and some links if people are interested. But this is a tensegrity model. And the essential understanding is that bones don't press on bones. And if you have a dinosaur whose neck's going out here and tail's going out here, the idea that it's just lining up bricks compressing on another doesn't, just in a really obvious way, doesn't explain how things work. But there is a continuous tensional network through the body. And the thing that it really just shows so easily is pathways, frankly. Here's a model that's sadly a little too lax, but it's incredible to me always how this, I mean, I'm sure some of you see a snake, some of you see a fish, some of you see a spine that's mobile, but there's ways that Legos or bricks could never express this. And there's just such a beautifully organic thing. And usually when somebody who has sensitive hands gets their hands on something like this, they start to just feel, oh my God, that's an analog. It's not a direct model, but it's an analog for this flow of forces through the body that we're striving for. That's the optimum, and the thing is, obviously, it's not most of the time it's not really happening freely, but the more we understand it in our own bodies, it's another thing I've learned from Joseph, so many things, but if you can feel it in your body, you can get somebody else's body to do it. And I found that to be incredibly consistently true. So this model is incredibly helpful for understanding that for me. And I'd love it if anybody's curious about that. So pathways, this seems like a direct parallel, and I'd be curious to hear more about it in a way. But with Feldenkrais, it seems like there's kind of the movement class is the awareness through movement, but then there's the hands-on stuff. And I think we have kind of a similar thing. We have pathways, what we're doing together as a whole in various ways. But then, to me, the thing that really excites me the most is the hands-on work. And I've had the great pleasure to work with Kimmy and Deb and Joseph when I've had the good fortune when he's been around, and Arthur as well. And it just strikes me as how, four great practitioners with great hands, and how everyone's touch it's a signature. It can be it's unique, but in some ways conveying the same material, not unlike four violinists playing the same Beethoven sonata. It's the same notes and it's the same music in an essential way, but then the personality of each comes through. So I really, really love that work, and I do it in little kind of in lessons very often. It depends on what people are coming. If somebody's coming in with pain, I end up working with them quite a bit, and it can just be a subtle thing in a lesson when somebody's locked in some way and needs a little education about how their ribs actually move. Surprise! All those skills come in handy and it can be just kind of. In other words, I wouldn't necessarily say we're going to do a CMI session right now, but it's just integrated into the teaching. And along with, so I said this basically a minute ago, but I think it's really just helpful to just say this clearly again, that a pathway or movement in the body is a sequential thing. And if something in the sequence is not working and not moving, then it needs to be addressed. And if one link in the chain is not really flowing, if one domino doesn't fall, then it's the disruption is absolute. And it's amazing how it can just be one element. And the discovery of what those blockages are and what's the origin of them is I really love that work. It's to do like triage. If I have half an hour with somebody I've never met, to be able to figure out what are the things, what is the situation, but also what would be the best way to get in to help them. And there's so many things that can be very clearly physical. It can be a guarding from an injury, but there's also things that just relate to the way somebody thinks they're supposed to sit. You can have somebody that moves very freely, and then they sit at their instrument and they immediately become presentational, lock their spine, push their sternum up, and that isn't the way they necessarily move normally, and it's certainly not a pathology in terms of their ribs or their spine. But they think they're supposed to do that. That's what they believe. That's what they've been taught, and so unless one addresses those proximal causes of why does somebody make that choice, consciously or unconsciously, it's very difficult to help them make a change. The most dramatic time I ever experienced that was teaching in Brazil, and I was working with I worked with this large group, and I did some rhythm work with them, and everybody was up. I don't know if anyone's been to Brazil. People are pretty free with their bodies and pretty universally, and not shy, and it just moves so beautifully, and the rhythm is in their body, really remarkably universally. But one of these same people is a violinist. I'm thinking her view of classical music is stiff, even though everything else in her life is so free. And so that was a way I could access that with her. I said, I just saw you move beautifully, and you were enjoying moving earlier. What if you did that when you played violin? Would you get in trouble, or is it scary? But she was the relief. The joy and the relief to realize that she could bring that part of herself to classical music was pretty profound. And that, hands-on work directly wouldn't have addressed that at all, because the issue was her way of being. The idea of access points is kind of how I want to get into to do some more specific things in a minute, but I'll actually get to that. So what do musicians need to be successful? It's a pretty long list, really, but there's some very specific things that are also pretty obvious. When I'm playing the piano, I got to use my fingers, I got to use my hands, and if I feel like I have comfortable ease and fine control in my hands, that's a good thing. I need that. A violinist needs that. A guitarist needs that. A clarinetist needs that. Most instrumentalists use their hands. An unfortunate thing is drummers call their contact with a stick a grip, which sounds like but the truth is it's a very dynamic thing with the wrist and the fingers. And if the drummer has that, then they're good to go. The other thing that's closely related to that is a free shoulder with fine control, and also strength. There's a lot of things with making music that take quite a lot of strength. So you need to be able to convey power, force through this shoulder that's also has a lot of fine control, and obviously that involves the whole body. But those two things have to be there: the fingers and the shoulder. The other one is the control of the breath. So we all need to breathe, and a free breath and not holding our breath is obviously an important thing. But a clarinetist needs to be able to use their breath in very, very specific ways. The breath for a tuba player and an oboe player are going to be really different, and singers obviously. So this is something that I'm doing when I'm talking as well, of course. But the constraints are much more specific, and so that's what I'd like to focus on is the fingers, the shoulder, and the breath. And what I've been finding, well, actually, just a quick little outline. There's so many things that musicians do that can, or the way they think about things, we think about things, that can end up causing limitations for our breath or mobility and control. And if you have a chance to work with a musician at their instrument, without I think it can easily feel intimidating. So I don't know Beethoven. I don't know what's going on. I don't know how to play the violin. However, there's all sorts of things you could notice that would be incredibly helpful that you can't do if they're not actually playing. So a narrowing of focus can happen in so many ways. So I'm playing, and then I'm bringing my attention, and it's a narrow way. It pulls me down. It makes things. It's going to affect the posture, obviously, and my breathing. But it also is going to make your arm heavy. If you start here, your arms are floating. If you pull yourself down here, there's going to be a heaviness that comes into your system that makes things very, very, very difficult. And so all sorts of things. Attention to detail. Which we need to do sometimes, but if I attend to a detail by narrowing my focus, as opposed to having a wider focus where I'm aware of a part, it's a subtle but difference, but it's also really pretty absolute difference. It can be a musical passage that's coming up that you're nervous about. Fear will narrow our focus like that, right? So there's also a bunch of things like that. So if you just look for that as a general rule or general thing, that's really helpful. One really challenging thing is so often things that musicians are doing relates to their musical maturity, their musical understanding. And a question always comes up, well, did Rubinstein have to learn all this stuff? And it's like, well, probably his musical instincts were incredible and mature right from the beginning. And you have great musicianship modeled from the beginning, and it makes it easier. Just an example of something that can happen. If I sing, dee da da dee, da da dee da. So what have I done? I've sung a phrase, and then in my mind I finished, and I take a breath, and then I sing something else. That's not how music works. Dee da dee da, dee da da da. So I'm not physically dropping between those two phrases. And at the piano, it could be a change of position. That's a task, and then I go, and then I do this, and then I do this. There's a reason that I'm moving in such a blocky way. It's because I'm thinking in a task-oriented way. I've got to do this thing here, and then I've got to move up here and do that. But instead, that's the primary melody, and this is a response. And I haven't left this down here, and then it continues and extends, and then this little echo up here. So the movement is better, but the movement is the resulting movement is better because my musical intention is different. And obviously, that's not something that a non-musician can necessarily help with, but it's really important to realize that there's this kind of interface. When you have somebody that has multiple skills, they're going to be able to really directly help a musician that is going through issues. Another thing is intensity, confusing effort and power. This is Tai Chi's all about this and many things. But when you need more intensity, people start to go, they effort into the instrument, makes an ugly sound and it hurts. And to understand those differences is really important. So let's get into some of these specific shoulder things. I've been finding that this series of things with the shoulders is incredibly helpful. And I haven't really met anybody that it hasn't been helpful for, and a lot of people it's been really significantly, makes really significant change. So the first thing I'd just like to say would be that what I'm really talking about is understanding and differentiating the different parts of this mechanism. We have a clavicle, we have the collarbone, we have the shoulder blade, we have the shoulder joint, and we have the ribs. If we look at those as separate items that all can be perceived, they can be moved, and that they obviously work together, but most everybody I work with doesn't really have any clear sense of any differentiation. And without that differentiation and that understanding, the postural cues that people are going to get are only going to screw them up. And it happens all the time. If I hear shoulders back, and I think this isn't just me, what I tend to do is take this part of me and just pull it back. Now, if somebody tells me that's going to help my posture, I might believe them, but I'm going to get pretty frustrated pretty quickly. And interestingly enough, another one we're going to get to in a minute, lifting up the sternum, thinking that's going to be sitting up straight. I can't breathe now. And I've got to limit that lifting of my sternum has locked my ribs, and now I also can't move my arms very well. So these are things people do all the time. The kind of tension people get from having their shoulders up. So this is a good example of body mapping. This would be a good time to cut in here. So we use the term shoulder. What the hell is a shoulder? In a sense, it means nothing. In a sense, it could mean a lot of things. But the likelihood of everybody in the room thinking the same thing when I say shoulder is almost nil. It genuinely can have different meanings. I mean, we can be very specifically and mean the shoulder joints. But if I open my anatomy book, kinesiology book, the shoulder involves the shoulder girdle and all these parts. And I mean, it's a region, that's true, but it's so helpful to really clarify what it is for ourselves, what it is we're intending when we say something, but also to be specific ourselves and then communicate that. So what I'd like to look at first is, so here's a right shoulder blade. A really obvious, with the classic postural patterns, one of the most important or universal things is that the lower traps, the muscles that are bringing the shoulder blade this way, the middle traps, rhomboids, but the muscles basically that are moving the shoulder blade, my right shoulder blade, down and in, are just offline. If you can reach under and slide your hand right into their shoulder blade, these muscles are obviously not active. And that winging shoulder blade is super common, but just the lack of participation. And unfortunately, my experience is, a physical therapist will say it's a matter of muscle strength. And I work with 20-year-old, you can have a guy can do a chin up. He can do all this stuff. So it's not a matter of strength. It's just a matter that these muscles here that move in this direction, they don't know how to talk to anybody at the party. They just don't know how to participate in the game. A double Dutch when they're doing the they don't know how to jump in and start to participate in the game. A cue I like that's super easy is lat pull downs. So many people know what that feels like. And if they're sitting like this and you say, well, pretend you're going to do this lat pull down, they organize so that their shoulder blade is on the same plane with those muscles and they start to engage in this. Well, what if you did a pull down here? Sorry, just a moment. Just getting called. If you do a pull down here and then play the piano with this hand, all of a sudden I'm organized in a much better way. I'm right over my feet. I'm connected all the way through, and that works remarkably consistently. And yes, I'm sitting up straighter, but what the result I'll get by trying to sit up straight won't necessarily wake up those muscles at all. So that's a good cue. A challenge is we can't obviously palpate our shoulder blades in the back without getting into a very different position than we normally are in. But there's this wonderful little access point, which is the coracoid process in front, which means crow's beak. I'm sure you all know all this stuff, but worth mentioning. And I just want to point out right away, too, I think it can seem like the shoulder blade's kind of this relatively flat thing on our back, but it's very curved and it also comes over the top. So basically, it's like you've got somebody with their hands on your shoulder, just sitting up there from the back. And it really curves over so far that right in the front here, we have, actually, this would be a participation time, please. Everybody find your coracoid. So nice way to find it is if you go to your collarbone and go right under your collarbone. And this is something where a fairly firm directed contact makes it easier to find. Stay right under your collarbone so you're pushing into your up first and second ribs up there, and you'll get to a point where there's a wall, and that's this bump right here. And for a lot of people, it's very surprising that their shoulder blade's way out in front. It truly is. It's part of your shoulder blade. And so one thing that I like to do with with class with partners is to, first of all, just have their partner find the shoulder blades of their partner in front of them, and then learn what it feels like to actually move that shoulder blade down and in. And the beautiful thing here is when the tip of the shoulder, I can show you with this, let's see, what is the angle here? I guess here. When the tip of the shoulder blade is going down and in, the coracoid is going up and out, depending on where you start. But there's a real beautiful correspondence to this space that, from classical drop is closed off. Now, I direct the coracoid out and up. My spine starts to extend, so and my chin starts to come back. There's all these faults that are immediately corrected. I breathe into this space here. My upper ribs start to move, and all those things are really wonderful. But I've directed my shoulder blade into that position that's also going to be more optimal for power and all those things. So it's an access that's really easy, and there's no. I'm truly accessing my shoulder blade, but I'm not. But I don't have to reach around to the back to do it. Another thing is, think about so this is the collarbone or shoulder blade on top of my ribs. And if my cue is shoulder blades, keep them down, my God, it's like taking somebody coming up behind you and pulling down onto your ribs. Now, that's going to make my arms heavy and stuck. I won't have buoyancy through the ribs, and breathing's going to be harder. So it's compromising all the things I need. Just try this on, that truly this is my shoulder blade, truly. It is directed up and out. So instead of my shoulder blade going down, my shoulder blade's going up. Part of it's going up, part of it's going down. But it's like you're coming over, you have a roller coaster and the people in front are going down, but the people in front and back are going up. It's a continuity, a continuum. So the feeling of saying, well, no, actually my shoulder blade is going up. My God, that's a great feeling. And it takes me up into the space. My arms start to float. And at the same time, my shoulder blade, that lower tip, is sliding down and integrating into those muscles. So it's just a beautiful cue. And it's when people, sometimes you find something good, but it doesn't communicate to the masses very well. But this one I find my class gets quite easily. I have to go around and help them find it, but they start to get that. So that's the first one. And now let's go to the collarbone next. As once again, as you all know, the collarbone is one of the sternoclavicular joint is one of two saddle joints in the body. And saddle joints have the interesting quality with saddle joints is on one plane, one of the members is convex, and then when it switches to the other plane of motion, it's concave. So what is the result of that? Two different ways, two different kinds of movements. Let's consider, if you think about a railway gate, you have, it's heavy, there's a weight here, and that drops for the gate to go up, right? But there's another type of motion which is going to be like this. So the whole, instead of there being a pivot inside of this member here, now the axis of rotation is outside of it. And the other thing is, think about if you were drawing, this was a pencil here, and I make that motion. Think of the size of the circle that would draw. And now if I'm moving around that, think of the size of the circle. I'll just do it here, see it. That's the arc, and now that's the arc. Much, much, much larger arc. So what does that have to do with the collarbone? Please find your proximal collarbone. If you get a little gag, it's right to either side of that. Put the heel of your hand right across, right on the proximal, basically right above the joint, and just lay your hand across your collarbone. And so you really feel that beautiful S shape. And then just very gently pivot your collarbone. Instead of thinking lift your shoulder, and that might be good to try. Lift your shoulders, see what that feels like. Oh, I don't like the feeling of that. Instead, I'm going to pivot my collarbone and then see what that feels like. And what I really want you to notice and start to look for is that the proximal end of that bone drops. You can actually push it down a little bit, and then that will just float up. So this pushes down, the rest of the bone pivots up. There's a dial. You can dial that with your hand. And if you put your heel of your hand also into some of your ribs, you can start to move your ribs with that. So let's say we start by dropping that proximal end of the collarbone, so the collarbone moves, then it goes into the ribs. And there's a very interesting thing here. This, in a sense, this is where your arm begins. That's where my eye is, and that's where my sit bone is. So if I'm going to throw something, for instance, all those parts are in line to organize my vision, my connection here, my connection down to the bench in this case. So if I've had an idea that I need to pull this down, well, I can't really access. Well, let's try just a quick CMI kind of move. Pull your shoulder down so this doesn't move, and then pivot, rock on your sit bone when this isn't available to sequence. And I expect you won't want to do that very long. And then instead, find this beautiful dialing. So by this part dropping, the collarbone floats up. And when the collarbone floats up, you really get this beautiful buoyancy in your whole shoulder. So now when I go onto the sit bone, it's able to sequence through my ribs because now my collarbone's moving with that. And then my arm floats. There we go. I don't want you to think this doesn't have any applications. That's my bow arm. That's my cymbal playing hand here. That's a conductor that's communicating buoyancy and power, connection to the ground. So the lightness doesn't mean this. This isn't lightness. Lightness is coming from real buoyancy. So this is a great way of triggering that buoyancy. The sound that makes the ease to just play anything at the keys when that's free is pretty incredible. So and just easy to sequence in to a pattern throughout the body. But that locks, it's amazing how I just can't, my pelvis is stuck. So a really nice thing to find. This goes up on this side and that will swing down on that side. So you can also really start to get the relationship of the two. And the thing that I find really an interesting question to me is like how much detail is required? Like what do you need to know to land a plane? There's I read that recently. It's like if the pilot dies, could somebody else land the plane? It's like, no, there's no way in hell you could go up there and understand all those controls. So how much detail is required? And this feeling of this part dropping and this part rising, to me, is necessary to really access that buoyancy. If I just say, "Oh, move your collarbone, relax," and move your, it's more specific than that. You need one key for this lock and another key for that lock, and there's specific keys. This is just my take on it. Okay, well, let's look in this other plane. So the vertical plane here, the elevation depression, is that pivoting inside of the bone. The movement back is a different mechanism because it's a saddle joint. A really interesting way to try this is, your collarbone can go back and forward, but go right to somewhere in the center of that collarbone and push pretty firmly straight back. And you'll find it just doesn't move at all. If you push a door that's on a hinge in the middle, perpendicular, it will swing, but that doesn't swing. Instead, put your hand across that collarbone, and what I'd like you to do is drag, just tension the skin, traction the skin laterally, right above the collarbone, and then notice how that easily starts that movement back. So it's a lengthening out to create that movement back. And then once again, you probably won't be able to help taking in a beautiful breath up into those upper ribs, because that unlocking and opening there will just create that response. So, and now taking that into a spiral path, it's just so direct. And once again, if that doesn't move, and I try to move in this spiral path, there's a domino that's just not going to fall. But if this domino frees up, that can create the availability to have that whole sequencing go through. Once again, you have, your up bow and down bow for a cellist or a bass player. There are just so many direct applications to that. And one more, this might be my favorite. We can keep going as long as I can go. But a really, really, really important one is the separation, the absolute separation of the breath and posture. Absolute. Now, we use breath with pathways, and that's great. But this is such a common issue that people have. There's a sense, it's in what we know about inflation. You pump up the balloon, everything expands out, and you let the air out, and everything drops. So you can say, go. And then what happens when they exhale? They go, So we can't have it be, and it isn't logical that we need the breath to go in to be upright. It's just, our arms need to be separate from that, and the breath needs to be separate from that. So, and specifically in this play, is our sternum is not a postural thing; it's a breathing thing. Now, if we can have a discussion about that. If somebody wants to push back, that would be great, but not yet. So, such a kind of it's demonstrated, but people talk about it. Keeping your sternum up. Just take a breath in and keep your sternum up, and bring yourself up. You're tough. Now, try exhaling. You will find it's if you keep that upward posture and that tough guy thing, all of a sudden you can't really exhale, because we need this. We need the ribs to move up and out. It's the classic bucket handle, pump handle, right? So the sternum needs to be able to move away from the spine and then come towards the spine. And if I equate this extension, path one, with my breath in, everything's going to end up being stuck. So what I'd like you to try is to do something very contrary. So be in a more curled position to start. Put your fingers under your collarbones, and then I want you to. I'll just say this once. I want you to take a nice breath in, exhale fully, and then when the air's just about out, then you're going to bring yourself into that full path one, full extension, and really guide yourself up with your collarbones. And now while you're up here, breathe in and out a few times and see, really have your picture be your ribs are separate. They're below your head, your free head. They're below your collarbone. They're below the shoulder girdle. So they can do their job to bring air in and out by changing the volume, and they can do their job to control the air. And what goes with that immediately is your collarbones are going to stay buoyant. So once again, if I'm a conductor, if I have that separation, my arms are going to be and hands are going to be so expressive. And look, I can breathe in and out. That doesn't break the support. That doesn't break the line. If every time I exhale, there's a little collapse, that's communicating something really, really, really negative. And a way that we can kind of the canary in the mine, a way we can really find this specifically is what's happened when you feel your collarbones. If I have my hand on my collarbone and then I think about going to the keys and I go like this has just gotten heavy, stuck. It's really stuck. And when I go to move my arm is heavy, and it's going to be it's just hard to do everything I need to do. Also, my breath is restricted because I've moved in this direction. So I'm a clarinetist, and I'm looking at the music, and I'm going to my clarinet. It doesn't take but just a tiny bit of this heaviness and drop to create that stuckness. So instead, exhale. Now the breath is independent. I can be here, but I can also move here, and this isn't heavy. I can just guide this up. I can guide this way in any one of these directions, because once again, the breathing mechanism, the ribs, the sternum are independent. It doesn't mean they're not still involved in support. They're 100% involved in structural support, but the equation isn't that when the breath comes in, then I'm up, and the other way around. So having that separate, then there's all sorts of, this is the connection to Tai Chi. Now that I have that, I can go into a Tai Chi class and imitate people pretty easily now, which is funny. When I couldn't 20 years ago, I was pathetic. But that's because of those changes. I have a feeling I've used up a fair amount of my time, and I'll go on. But if there are questions or discussion, I'd love to hear. Joseph, love to hear. You're muted, my friend.
You're on mute. And you still have a little more time, Doug.
Oh, well, still, let's jump in with this and we can.
Okay, so you can hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Welcome all. Well, it's interesting, as the founder of CMI back in about 1998, 2000. It's a brilliant presentation, Doug. I really think you've done a magnificent job. Now, what I've been trying to do is simplify. That's why, for me, everything you said, absolute, there's no question. It all holds together. But what I've been trying to do is simplify it. That's why we use the pathways. When the brain finds a pathway, you don't have to explain for hours and hours all the particular moves and the muscles and the joints, because the brain already knows it. I'm showing it right now. I'm doing a trap, look, rib, sternum, clavicular, basic of neck, just in one movement. And my arm can go up and down, laterally rotate. I work with tennis players, you see, when they find that angle, the ball goes the right way. So that was the whole point of CMI, was to simplify it, to make it available, because the brain thinks in pathways, not in detail. You have to cultivate detail. And that's good when you're a therapist working with people, you need that information. But when I have to work with clients, I have to use something that the brain already knows from day one. It's called vectors of force. So that's why I simplified it. So that's all I come back to, is profound simplicity, and why I are designing it.
Wonderful. This isn't really pushing back. It's just a different angle. It's like the thing I always come back to is the trying to, what are the things that trigger a positive cycle of connections, and you just described some of those beautifully. But what are the things that it's a fascinating thing. You can work with somebody and they're everything's going great, and they're getting if they're a musician, they're getting a great sound and they're so happy, and they come back the next week and they're not doing it at all. And
Yeah,
so
well,
what are the, just to say, what are the things? And so there are lots of things that are also that they've taken from day one or day 12 or the tenure of their life, that they get lessons. And so while it's true there's details about the shoulder that are specific, but when people think shoulder, they're often doing stuff that's actively screwing them up over and over and over again. And
you
so
said
that's
it
why
perfectly.
I find this being able to perceive some specific element of who they truly are. Our collarbone is part of what we are and who we are. And when we start to just feel it move, it often feels pretty delicious. I mean, that freedom of that movement. I got a video of Buddy Rich, and he doesn't hold his shoulder down. It's moving really freely as he's playing, and that's part of the ease of it.
Well, just to add, see, I teach Tai Chi now. I'm teaching a class here, and I teach exactly the same. What you're saying is right on. I fully support you. I think the two go together. And as a
Thank you.
therapist, you need to have, you and Arthur would have a great dialogue because he loves that detail. He knows the muscles, the joints, the tissue, the fascia. See, that's complementarity. That's why we need teamwork. See,
Yep.
my sense is limited to really focusing on the connection of the pathways. That's what I'm best at. And you guys fill in the beautiful, and that's why we're a team. We're in a concert. We're musicians playing together. But and different strokes for different folks, you know. So it'll be great because
It's
that's what.
interesting. I want to just share this with you, and well, I guess everybody else too. But I remember one of the most important learning experiences at one of the classes was so I was working with somebody on the table, and there was some specific kind of path we were doing, and I started to in my intuition just told me to go somewhere, and I thought, well, this isn't what I'm supposed to do, this other thing. And then I did the thing I thought I was supposed to do, and you came over and did exactly the thing that my intuition was telling me to do. And that from then on, that confirmed it's like, well, I just got to trust it. And I couldn't have told you it was path 17 or anything, but it's like this part wasn't moving and it needed to move. And so that's what I also have gotten out of it that's been most meaningful.
I'd like to have the people to speak, but I'll just say one thing. You know, I worked with focal dystonia with pianists and violinists several times. So I know, when you mentioned that from the beginning,
It's
that
brutal.
that was the key point, and that was the kind of like starting point. So I'm with you. I think I've done a great job. I think you've
Thank
developed.
you.
I hope you can do this more because the kind of explanation reaches the practitioner a lot, and that's what the practitioner needs, and that's where the
Hmm.
advanced levels come in. So very good. Thank you for a beautiful
Thank you.
presentation. Yeah,
Means a
just
lot.
slow down. They tell me slow down on your talking and
Ah.
let it less absorb because it was absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, I can be a little bit of a fire hose at times. I'd love to hear any thoughts, especially about the last one. I honestly haven't heard people talk about that. I'm sure people do, but the separation of the breathing and the idea that the sternum isn't the postural thing. It's really a breathing bone.
Um, if I may say something, I
Please.
particularly like maybe because I'm a dancer as well. I'm a dance educator, and to really differentiate when we were talking about the shoulder, indeed, what is the shoulder and what is your idea? Everybody has a different idea of what a shoulder is. And it's so great that you begin to construct of at least as a practitioner, it sounded to me very useful to make it clear to how you are as a therapist, you are approaching the shoulder to your student or to your client or
Hmm.
and for me differentiating these parts and getting to know and then integrating them in the pathways that is brilliant for me. I mean, it's I can understand, Joseph, that you're interested in the pathways and the connections, but especially dancers, they think they are in the pathway, but they holding some parts that are not
Yes,
even
yes.
aware of it. I think musicians are like that as well. So this kind of approach, at least for people who know their bodies so well, I don't know. It was very helpful to me. I was like, oh my God, yeah, the shoulder. Oh, it was like, so I start making the whole picture. And then when the pathway comes, it comes so much more, at least for me in my body, yeah, so much more integrated, naturally buoyant, and yeah, this is what happened to me doing following what you are. So that differentiation and integration into the pathways for me worked really well in my body.
Thank you. Thank you. A few minutes. I've worked, had the opportunity to just work with a couple of ballet students that are the conservatory that's next door, and that idea of that they have of the sternum high. I mean, when it goes to the collarbones instead, you can have that up, but then this. I mean, they need to breathe. They're flying up across the stage. Thank you so much, Kimi. Yeah, anybody.
So I'm wondering if when we teach paths 1 and 2, that we make sure that people understand that you can inhale using either one and exhale using either one would be helpful in making sure that the sternum doesn't get stuck.
Yeah. And try doing the active opposite, which is what you're saying. But so you were this when I first kind of discovered this for myself, that it was hard to exhale while really extending. But the functionality of that, the connection through the full spine into the sit bones, and now I mean that just gets me over my feet in a pretty amazing way.
I'm not probably unmuted, but I support you totally. I've been teaching that from day one. The breath can be done both ways. That was fundamental. The breath can be done go both ways in any of the pathways.
So much of the time, people are holding their breath. They're holding their breath instead of using their breath.
The problem to me, though, the problem with using to say like, how does your breath naturally go with this? It's pretty much always going to be that people are going to inhale when they come up, and that I think actively breaking the pattern is super helpful.
Yes,
Or to do it at a completely different rate, or sing a long note while you're doing both things like that.
the reason, Doug, I don't know if I'm unmuted, because the breath is on the default basic, will follow the movement. You've made a differentiation, which is further maturation. That's the Feldenkrais principle. You have taken it and shown it doesn't have to be just default. It is shown
Uh-huh.
exactly right. So you're right on. But that's a further development, because normally the breath will, the default will tend to go together with.
Yep.
I've found it very interesting, this guiding and gliding on the collarbone, and the using the coronoid process. I never thought about that as an OT. I have spent years digging under people's scapulas. That's so much easier. I really like that. Thank you.
Yeah, people can be so surprised. Well, how can my shoulder blade be here? Isn't it on the back?
Hi, Doug. I just want to say
Hi.
thank you. Thank you for the use of imagery and the hands-on. I love adding that to the pathways. And I do training called embodied anatomy and movement, where we kind of,
Oh,
we use our knowledge of the body to embody our bodies. And I think the arms actually start in the lungs, but I loved that idea of, connecting the eye, the collarbone, the sit bone. That was wonderful. And I could do the pathways. I am doing, I think, the pathways every day in different, whether I'm walking or swimming or, I have loved integrating that work. And part of what keeps it also fresh and new is these add-ons, I guess. Playing with the breath, what breath pattern do I want to do here, or what if I inhaled in path 2? And the imagery also keeps it fresh and fun. So it's
nice. Oh, I'm
it's
so
been
happy to
really
hear.
it's always fun to hear core movement integration folks, because you're all clearly very, very knowledgeable, about the body and very embodied. So that's great fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
And since Joseph is on,
Yeah.
Giuseppe, I want to thank you for distilling. This is the essentials that can really help us, guide us, keep us on the right embodiment path. Thank you. I do apologize for having dark glasses. I'm sitting outside because it's an absolutely gorgeous day here. That's part of
Nice.
being embodied on this earth. We are connected to.
Well, maybe I'll just say another couple things, and please jump in with questions. I don't play the guitar, but I have one here. And one thing we can do working with an instrumentalist is realizing that the instrument needs to become part of the structure. And what tends to happen is I'm going to stiffen my body and push my hand here so that I can move. But instead, saying that, okay, this is a contact, so that's a real thing. That's a fulcrum. This is my contact here. I've got my thumb and my fingers. And what I like to do with instrumentalists is go to move their instrument. And if some people move their instrument will go like this, but if their instrument, ideally, if I move it, it's going to move them. There's the contact and back here. And so you can think about it, a pathway, but you can also just experiment. What if I moved this part? Well, the instrument is going to follow up here. If I open the ribs, then everything is organic. I mean, it looks like a guitarist. I'm not a guitarist, but violinists, same thing. If Lydia's here, please forgive me. But what happens if people tend to drop a lot, and you bring this up, but ideally, the ribs are going to follow, and all of this is going to move in a way together. And when the bow's on the string, there's a circuit between your right arm and the bow and the contact here, and there's a circle all the way around. And that we have skills to play with. What happens if my ribs move here? How does that connect through the instrument? And so bass and cello are really fun. This isn't a bass, it's just a stick. But, if you have a bass player, you can come over, and what they often do is lock their knee into the bass to stabilize. But once again, there's no mobility if that's the case. They ideally are just standing freely with the bass. And then if you go over and pivot the bass, ideally they're just going to move very freely with the instrument as they're playing. And they have a contact, the strings up higher here. And so there's that circuit between our two hands, the instrument. And in this case, it's a dance partner. It's Fred and Ginger here. And that we can so easily engage with, and without knowing anything about the detailed technique of the instrument. We don't need to. And the chances are very high that they're not going to get any of that from their teacher, because their teacher is more focused on some other detailed things. And it's a very supportive thing. It's a nice parallel supportive thing.
Very good. Yeah.
Oops. Where's my list here? Well, we'll give you one more thing to do. It looks like it can be helpful. The question about the detail. I mean, I feel like it's a little implied that it can be overwhelming amount of detail for a student, but the the collarbone is just such an accessible thing, and we can feel it. It's not a hidden thing. It's not like thinking about your collarbone won't make you, perceiving your collarbone is not going to prevent you from walking. You're not going to fall on your face because you have an awareness of this part of you. So it's just bringing an invitation to just explore a part of us that most people have no sense of at all. And that really interesting contrast between this movement, which it's a fascinating thing when upper traps are tight and painful for everybody for the most part, right? But when you really get that sense of that dropping down in the center and that moving, this tends to just feel really easy and relaxed, which is an interesting thing. You think, well, if those muscles are lifting my shoulder, wouldn't that make it worse? But it's actually, if I try to move in a way, that's my collarbone, that it doesn't move, the muscles are fighting the trajectory. But if I actually feel that natural pivot there, it's going to be free. In a similar way, we can, movements of our upper arm and then therefore our arm come from that spinning there, right? It's something you can feel. Your body senses it. Your body muscles create the spin. Our body has to feel that spin. So you feel the front part of your humerus. There's some sort of tuberosity bump there. I can't remember what they're called. But if you just internally and externally rotate, yeah, you can feel it spinning. So if you just bring your attention to perceive that. And a really common thing with pianists in particular is that we know we need to move in a linear way. I've got to move up there. But what they do, up the keyboard, in other words, but they push their elbow over in a straight line. Now, this is my elbow moving in a straight line. It doesn't work. But as soon as I try to do that, it locks this joint up. So you get people in this position, and if you go to move their elbow, they can't, it's completely frozen. But they came from the intention of moving that in a straight line when it can't. So then you show everybody just put their hand over the humerus. So you really picture the ball. The ball's basically going to be right at the center of your hand when you do that. And bring your arm here. So you're just going to draw with your elbow and just make a little circle and move that circle around to a different place. Make a figure 8. Draw the figure 8 somewhere else. Doing it an infinity sign now, put it on its side. And then just sign your name. It's an incredible motor control thing if you think about those rotator cuff muscles that are keeping that joint centrated and have the fine control to do anything you can do out here. And as musicians, we need that. So that pianist, remember, they push their elbow in a straight line and they don't have access to any of that anymore. That's something we can help them with. But once again, you can perceive that moves in an arc and a curve. So then what is the arc that gets me over there? And when I have that, then I'm going to have some ease. Yes, Joseph, please.
what you said is absolutely right on. Beautifully, again, demonstrated and nice and simple. But you know, Doug, it's not about musicians. Every activity in sport and dance is the same movement.
Yeah.
Lifting and washing the dishes is the same. So you're talking about a
I was
universal.
invited to talk about musicians, so I thought I needed to restrict
You
it.
might
But
as well
yes,
make it universal.
The Venn diagram between musicians and humans is actually largely the same. Musicians are humans too. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
but
believe you
might
there.
as well make it so we don't limit it, you know. But that's
Thank
exact.
you.
I
No,
do. Look at Tai Chi; it's the same
it
thing.
was my mandate, so I thought I needed to just say that. Yes, thank you. So Deb, what do you think? Crazy talk or?
Nope, it's right on.
It's good. It's a matter of getting this out in a way that, if you overload, and I've been accused of overloading, they say, but if you overload information, the brain shuts off. That's
Mhm.
psychoneuro. So the way, you have to do it in step and step, to introduce
Yeah.
one piece, and that's why I like the connection, one to two, two to three, three to four. Don't jump from one to four, because then the brain will shut off because people can't
Yeah.
follow it. So they naturally avoid.
A nice thing is my class is 2 hours long every week, so we don't have to cram everything in.
Exactly. It's a really nice. Listen, I'd like to suggest, because I've got to leave it myself. You've done such a beautiful job. See, Arthur and I are really working in a similar way with the trap. It's not just the trapezius; it's the whole line of connection from the trap to the neck, to the spine, to the pelvis. That's what we're going to deal with in the next, if we can get our act together. And I would love to have you invited to be the arbitro. You know what an arbitro is? Like the referee, to the moderator, to keep us on track with the detail and contribute, because I think we need to
Oh, I'd love
create
to.
that together. After seeing what you do, that's how, if we can get our time and dates together, it would be wonderful to do this,
Amazing.
but it's got to be done, because it can overwhelm the normal practitioner. They're not trained this way, as you said. They're not trained to see that. They're not going to follow it. They're going to cut off. It's called cognitive dissonance. I don't want to see what I cannot see. Thank you so much. I'm really impressed by
Grazie.
what you've
Grazie mille.
done. Beautiful work. Maybe you should move into the tennis and sports. You'd be absolutely marvelous.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think you've really done a beautiful integration.
So are there any other questions? Okay. So I'm sure that everyone will be interested in seeing the video, Doug, and having a chance to repeat the movements that you showed us multiple times. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was very
Thanks for asking me. It was really fun to do.
good.
One point you made is you have to get it in your body first. That's huge. You have to get it in your body first. And then your body goes, I don't like doing that old way. I like the better.
Yep.
But that's the other thing too, is it learns what to do to be better.
Mhm.
Yeah, if I can say something, it's just like anyway, for me, everything that's new physically, any new information, because I'm so observing and bringing attention to that spot, then I stop breathing. So that's why it's repetition, and also like to trust it, and repetition is really very important. So you can observe and do and breathe at the same time. It's that's what's happening to me.
Okay. So we'll let you know when the video is available, and you can let us know if you want us to send you a link. Thank you, everyone, for attending. And thank you, Doug, for very informative. And what I liked about your presentation was it was very easy to digest. There was lots of information, but it was very clear and easy to follow your directions and feel what you were trying to convey.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear. Thank you for the feedback.
Yeah.
I do strive for that, so it's nice to know if you hit the mark.
Right.
Well, our next session starts next Sunday, so we'll see. You'll be a topic of conversation.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. Thank you, everyone. I guess it's time to sign off.
Great. Thanks
Thank
again
you.
for the invitation. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.